Today is October 6th, 2021, and apparently I am morbidly obese. My ex-husband had this thing about insurance. He thought it was a scam and we should be able to put our own money aside for medical things. Our daughters had medical insurance through the state. Even though he had a full-time job, every year when it was time to sign up for medical at his job, he wouldn't. It would only take $30 from his check, but he thought it was an absolute ripoff. He would show in the Bible how we should be able to heal ourselves with herbs and vegetation of the land. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that there is much healing in medicinal herbs, but let's face it, we all need a little help because he and I had no medical insurance. We also didn't go to the doctor regularly for checkups. We also ate according to the Bible, so no pork, no shellfish, crab, lobster, shrimp, etc. And we also did not eat hybrid foods, because the Bible says that you shall not mix a seed with another seed. Our diet became extremely restricted. There weren't enough vitamins in the world to replace the minerals and nutrients that we were missing from certain foods that we just weren't eating anymore. It got to the point where he was convinced that we should be able to survive off of one food. They call this the mono diet. I swear he tried to get us there, and we had many arguments about food intake. As time had gone by, we had gone so long without certain foods that if they were reintroduced to our diet, it just made us sick. The funny part is, over time, I still became overweight and had a hard time losing it. I started overeating, probably because of stress, and I had been yo-yo dieting since I met him when I was 19 years old. Something that he had introduced to me was dieting. He was on the Atkins diet when we met. I wasn't on any type of diet. My motto was eat all the food groups and exercise. Made sense to me. I remember when I first started working for him at the dealership when I was 19. This was before we were dating. It was a long day at work. Now, once a week, we had to work ding to dong, which meant we had to work from the time the dealership opened to the time the last customer left the lot. So pretty much from 8:30 a.m., sometimes until midnight. It really depended on the day. I was hungry. I had been there since 8:30 in the morning. It was like 4 in the evening, and I hadn't eaten anything yet. So I went to Wendy's, got myself a chicken burger with fries and a Frosty. I liked to dip my fries in the Frosty. If you know, you know. I was sitting at my desk eating my chicken burger, and then he walked past my desk, and the first thing that he said to me was, "Those carbs are going to go straight to your hips." And there it is. That was the seed that was planted to make me feel like I was destined to be fat in the future. And I need to start taking care of that right now. I was 19 years old, and I had just gotten on a new routine where I would wake up at 5 a.m. I would run 3 miles around my apartment complex, then head to the early bird service at church that started at 6:20 a.m. Then I would sit in my car and eat the breakfast I packed for myself, and then get on the road and head to work and be there by 8:30 a.m. I disregarded that whole routine that I had newly created for myself, and it was all downhill from there. After having my first daughter with him, I immediately lost the weight by going on a smoothie and a high protein diet with exercise, and I bounced back with no problem. After my second daughter, it took me a little more time, but I ended up going on a baby food diet with no exercise, but somehow that worked. After having my third daughter, it was a very high-risk, scary pregnancy that ended up being life or death. That would be another story for another journal entry. As you can see, I made it through. But after giving birth to my third daughter, I fell into postpartum depression. I really needed to talk to someone, but I knew that my ex-husband didn't want me to talk to anyone, so I lied and I told everyone I was fine when I wasn't. I gained 50 pounds in 3 months. Before the next year came around, I had put on a little over 100 pounds. It took years for me to get the weight off, since most of the weight was from overeating. This is about the time we started really digging into the Bible and finding out things that we shouldn't be eating, mostly about pork and a lot of different seafoods. We also discovered bitter herbs and other herbs that are good for healing and things like that. I started using my knowledge and research about these different herbs and bitter herbs, and I started using them as different teas for my family. And I also discovered how to make body creams and tinctures and ointments, and that part was pretty cool. I started incorporating a lot of different herbal teas into my diet and eating the food groups and exercising, and actually started losing weight. I went from like a size 22, 24 to like a size 14. And that was a pretty big loss for me. By this time, like 4 years had passed though. Then I got pregnant with my fourth daughter. It ended up being a pretty devastating pregnancy also, and it landed me in the hospital a few times. My longest stay was about a month and a half maybe. After having my fourth daughter, she came out with so many complications. She wasn't breathing for her first 10 minutes of life. Then she had multiple seizures and was immediately transferred to Seattle Children's Hospital. So while I was still healing from giving birth, they were discharging me so I can make the drive and be with my daughter, who was having trouble breathing and was on 100% oxygen. Long story short, the stress of her birth sent me over a bit, and I ended up putting on weight, but not as much as with my third daughter. I went up to about a size 16, 18. It was a little over a month, and my fourth daughter was finally able to come home from the hospital, but she was on oxygen and a feeding tube, and over time, we learned that she had allergies. We took this time to radically change our diet to pretty much help out our fourth daughter. And this is where we found out about hybrids and a lot of natural ways of eating and treating things and ailments. We went on an 8-week smoothie fast and lost a ton of weight. I got myself down to like a size 12. The problem with those diets is they are not very sustainable over time. Some other stressful things happened. We pretty much ate like a Mediterranean diet, but I found a way to binge everything that I would eat, and the weight just slowly but surely crept back. And I tried every diet and exercise routine that you could think of, but when you are binge eating everything, it doesn't really matter. After I decided to file for divorce from my ex-husband, I focused on walking twice a day, and the stress of being married was no longer. And the weight just started falling off. I had lost like 30 pounds in just a few months. Somewhere in the summer of 2021, I got comfortable and I started incorporating more of the foods that we had cut out of our diet. And I began overeating again. I can honestly say it was definitely the pressure of being a single mom of 4 and 2 of them with disabilities. On top of that, I had the freedom to eat what I wanted. No one was there to yell at me for eating certain foods or buying certain foods. I can recall being pregnant with my fourth daughter. When I am pregnant, I get this condition called hyperemesis gravidarum. It's pretty much an extreme hyper state of vomiting that lasts throughout the majority of my pregnancies, usually about 6 to 8 months. Now, during this time, I usually experience extreme dehydration and malnutrition. The doctor will normally prescribe me to not take anything in by mouth. That way I can stop vomiting. And then he will put me on around the clock anti-nausea meds. And then an at-home IV is placed for constant hydration and nutrition intravenously until I get to a point where I begin to get an appetite. And I start eating and drinking again on my own without relying on the IV. Well, I was about 6 or 7 months pregnant, and my appetite began to return. I was actually in the hospital when my appetite started coming back. I was recovering from infections throughout my body. My IV had gotten infected with bacteria. It caused bacteria to grow on one of my heart valves, and the bacteria spread to my lungs. My kidneys and urinary tract developed a bacterial infection also. I was in the hospital for about a month and a half. By this time, my family was on a pretty strict diet. We were learning a lot from the Bible at the time, and we had eliminated dairy and chicken out of our diet because cows and chicken were hybrid animals. The doctors had me on a lot of vitamins and different medications, and I guess I just wanted to see how many of those pills I could just free myself from taking by trying to get my body to start eating again. I started turning on the cooking channel every morning to see if I could stand the look at food without wanting to gag. I was able to watch, so I used the cooking channel to activate my appetite. I started to first crave strawberries and then breakfast cereal, and because we weren't eating dairy, I would use soy milk for my morning cereal. A basic breakfast would end up being Rice Krispies with soy milk and a side of strawberries. Then eventually I added goat milk yogurt or coconut yogurt and granola. And then eventually I had myself a set breakfast, lunch, and dinner with limited to no vomiting in the day. I had to work myself up to a certain amount of water daily before they would release me from the hospital. Then I had to prove that I could maintain my hydration and nutrition on my own before they officially released me. Well, I finally got to the point where I could maintain it. My ex-husband worked full-time and he didn't have the time to take care of me, so my mom and my stepdad and my brother helped significantly. I gave my mom a list of food to purchase, so when I got home, I could keep the same routine that I had in the hospital, so I could continue to maintain it on my own. And I remember my first day back at home, I was confident that I could do this. All I had to do was keep my same routine and I would be fine. My ex-husband came home from work. I smiled at him and I told him that I was glad to be home. I was glad to see my kids again. I told him that I gave my mom a list of food to buy and she had put everything in the pantry for me. He looked pleased. He asked, "What did she buy?" I said mostly cereal, soy milk, bread for sandwiches, yogurt, granola, strawberries. He looked with a little concern when he heard me say breakfast cereal. There were two issues at hand. One, he didn't like buying cereals because he thought they were a waste of budget money, and the only people who purchase cold breakfast cereal are those who live in a quote-unquote ghetto mentality. Two, he didn't think breakfast cereal was healthy. So I was trying to explain to him that I am not trying to disregard how he feels about these foods, but while I was in the hospital, these were the only foods I could keep down. He walked over to the pantry and he took the cereal boxes and he threw them across the room. They all busted open and all the cereal was everywhere. And he was yelling at me because he was angry that I could put such food in my body while I'm pregnant with his child. He was yelling about how careless I was about healing my body if I'm trying to heal from the infections and serious about getting off of the medications that I was currently on, then I wouldn't be putting any of this shit in my body. I was crying. I didn't know what else to do but cry. He's yelling, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because I'm scared. You just threw all the food across the room that got me out of the hospital. These are the only things that I've been able to not throw up." I'm pleading with him, trying to explain to him that I'm very serious about getting better. I don't want to go back to the hospital. He put some chia seeds in a bowl in front of me and some water, and he said that eating chia seeds and drinking the water would help keep me hydrated. I looked at those chia seeds and I just knew they were not going down my throat without me gagging first. I sure did not want to start vomiting again. I told him I couldn't eat those right now, and he said, "Oh yes you can, and I will, because they're going to help me heal my body and stay hydrated." He went online and he tried to find as many things to help me out naturally. I understood what he was trying to do, but he didn't understand what I was trying to do. This is an update for today, Sunday, July 17th, 2022. Now, this is just one example of many battles that we would have with food in our house. There was always so much yelling. You just get to the point where you want to avoid the yelling, so you comply. And that's what I did. I complied. So now, being away from my ex-husband, I did notice that I fell into this mental state where I wanted to eat everything that I had been deprived of. And before I knew it, I had put on 15 of those 30 pounds that I lost. I went to the doctor because I have insurance now, and she did a full workup on me and found out that I'm healthy, but I'm morbidly obese. And she said that I have to get my weight down so I don't have to deal with a lot of the diseases that come along with obesity. Now, the hardest thing to do is not rely on all those fad diets that I learned along the way. I'm working my way back to whole foods, food groups, and exercise. I have to tell myself all the time that this food is not going anywhere. It's not easy to let go of the things that I learned, and it's also not easy to not binge eat when I get stressed. It's been my go-to for so long. My body just automatically uses it to cope. There are still a few foods that I still can't eat, like pork, crab, lobster, shrimp. Those foods still make me sick to my stomach. I also learned along the way that dairy is not my friend. I don't eat that by choice. I have an actual sensitivity to dairy. I find myself eating some things because I can, and I question if I eat some things out of spite. Now, deep down, I have this fear that the food is going to be taken away from me, so I eat as much as I can before that happens. I share this story in my journal today to mark the day for me to reference back. I don't know how long it's going to take for me to get out of the red zone and not be morbidly obese anymore. I wholeheartedly believe that it's going to take time to heal from the damage that was done psychologically and the damage that was done to my body chemistry. I read this book that my therapist recommended for me. It's called Health at Every Size. And one of the things that I learned was that all of those diets that I had done and my weight constantly going up and down threw off the natural body chemistry that my body has that would naturally keep me at the weight I should be at. I'm also training for a half marathon, which is 13 miles. I've been training for about 8 months now. I feel like I'm moving like a tortoise, but I'm not stopping. I have 4 more months to get myself ready. I know I can do this. I have been through so much, and if I can get through all the shit my ex-husband put me through, and 2 pregnancies that I almost didn't make it through, then I can get myself ready for this half marathon. For my training, I downloaded an app to help me train for the marathon. It puts me on a running routine based off of where I am physically when it comes to running and working out in general. I also joined a group run by my brother's wife, and it's a great support group where we hold ourselves accountable with our nutrition and workouts, and no one judges us. We just support each other. I absolutely love it. Then there is my boyfriend who has run this marathon before in past years. He runs with me when he is able to, but he encourages me every chance he gets, and I so appreciate it. He will be running the marathon this year too. I am running this marathon for me. Although it challenges my body like no other, and it pushes me beyond any limit that I have set for myself, I am not giving up. I will get there, and I will get there in my own time. Until my next journal entry, remember that gratitude is the key.